Philadelphia. You probably couldn't hear me just then. Good morning, everyone. It's a fine and lovely Wednesday morning, December 2nd, here in Philadelphia. And we're going to jump right into it with the coffee break chat. I just need to change a setting or two here. Let me make sure I'm doing the right one. I need you guys on my headphones. There it is. There we go. And I'd like to welcome my special guests, Ann Wexler and Tamara Anderson, and say good morning, everyone. Please introduce yourself, Tamara, and your pronouns and what it is you do.
Hello. My name is Tamara Anderson, pronounced she, hers, and I am a producer recently for Gumball Lab, and I'm a local actress and artist too.
All right, and Anne, if you would please introduce yourself and your pronouns and what it is you do.
I am Ann Wexler, and my pronouns are she, her. I am also an actor as well. Right now, I'm local in Philly, but I usually I'm in New York as well. So I like to think that I can speak the cities. But yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much. And what we have you guys here this morning with us is talking a little bit about some upcoming productions you have. Let's jump into Tamara's first. I don't know how Megan actually managed to book you guys on the same day, which is great, but it's because we love to have wild and varied conversation. But you guys have two completely separate projects, so let's talk about them one at a time a little bit.
Okay, so the first that I'm working on now, and actually we'll be making an announcement of our first cohort of solo artists. So I'm working with Juniper Productions, and Gumball Lab is the lead producer. And I came up with this idea, of course, because we're in the middle of a pandemic and theater is turned topsy-turvy. I'm sure like many of us, we saw many of our contracts get canceled overnight, making these transitions. And I was just trying to figure out like, what is a way to nurture not just new artists, because I really hate that term emerging artists, because I like to think of things as being intergenerational as much as possible. But how can Black female artists, Black trans artists, femme artists, Black queer artists, like come together who have ideas for solo shows and incubate them in a very nurturing and community-like space? Hence the term Gumball Lab. So I love making gumbo. When I have friends over, I like making this little warm meal. It is a way I think that families come together, friends come together. And so what each artist will receive is they'll be connected with a director / dramaturg to help them work out their show. So they'll have literally 4 weeks to work out their script and all these things. And then we're combining them with a cinematographer to film their project. And in the midst of this 4 weeks, really it's 6 weeks, they get workshops. In their workshops, they learn how to audition virtually. They learn how to create the actor's calling card. So like we're teaching them how to make basic websites, social media things, how to do voiceover for your project. We have a film person coming in to talk about how to make magic with your cell phone, how to not just use it for self-tapes, but how with a side of bubble wrap and a pillow, you can also use it for voiceover audition. I'm clearly telling my business. I know when people are like, is that why you booked that job? You have no idea. I was like, wrap my mouth inside this bubble wrap and put a pillow. Literally, I look like, my daughter walks by and she's like, what is happening? I'm like, mama's trying to get a check. So I figured, I find that as artists, we don't have a lot of time to woodwork ourselves. And if we do get that chance, somebody's trying to charge us hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and you get there and you're like, I don't feel like I got anything from this project. So this is really an educational opportunity. but it's also like an opportunity to combine venues, because the final project will be a film, will be like a film like project. And it's also allowed me to make connections with like other theater companies in the city who are like, hey, if you want to use this space, or you want to use the outside, or how to do pictures. And we're making it all virtual. It's a permanent virtual platform. People have asked, well, what about we have a vaccine or da da da? And I'm like, what's your point? Like, we still need to have a virtual space. Virtual spaces are okay, right? We need to make these spaces live and popping. And what better way to do that than to actually have a group of artists in this cohort kind of like incubate this idea and make it amazing, and also be encouraged by each other. Sometimes people do these ideas and they'll say the best show is the one that gets produced, but I wanted to alleviate competition. I wanted to be organically competitive, where it's like you're encouraged because, oh, so-and-so just did this really great thing with her show. I didn't even think about that. Let me go do this with my show, that type of thing. We have some amazing Black women directors, Black female. It's very female centric. We literally have one male director in the whole group. And then we have some local female cinematographers. One of them is from Philly Cam. So having that local thing. And that kind of also intersects with the work. I'm with an organization called Racial Justice Organizing Committee, which works very closely in developing anti-racist trainings for teachers and educators in the city. We've done like them for Baltimore. We've done them for many schools around the city. And so putting my activism work and education and my theater work, like all coming together in one silo, is I'm very excited about that. So yes, that's what's happening. Oh, and this December 19th, we're having a fundraiser. Dun, dun, dun. It's called the Soulful Celebration. Right, I know. Every time I say it, it gives me great joy. I love saying it. It took me a while. I think I was like, Gumbo celebration, food, dinner, come to dinner, party with a purpose. My friend was like, is this 1992? What is it? And so finally I was like, a soulful celebration. I said, no, soulful. Like, they were like, yeah. I was like, oh, that feels warm in my stomach. So I have these amazing people coming out to perform. Brian A. Wilson, who's local, is doing an August Wilson tribute. Our friend Jennifer Fouché, who just got through being on tour with the Broadway Chicago, she's going to be singing. Bethlehem is going to be singing. So we have a combination of local artists, but what makes it so great is I'm also inviting community activists. So like there's this amazing actress who's been doing work around mental health in the Black theatrical community out of New York called Carlita Victoria with Darkness Rising. We also have Keziah Ridgway, who's been working with Racial Justice Organizing Committee with Groceries for Philly. It's a mutual aid program. So once a month, a pop-up store happens. It gets produce and food. And this happened out of the uprisings when West Philly, some of the stores were really decimated and closed. And instead of being like, well, this is terrible, she had this amazing idea to hand out groceries to people, and it's caught on, and they'll continue their work. So having people kind of talk about their work. I mean, yes, we're raising money for the Solo Lab, but I also think it's a great opportunity for people to talk about the work they're doing and hopefully get people interested to give money for that too.
It does sound like a great opportunity for that. We haven't nailed everything down, but I'm supposed to be helping with that. Let me add in Anne to the screen here, and let's talk a little bit about your project as well. You've got what's coming up, the Act 2 Playhouse Holiday Special.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, I'm just so like floored by everything Tamara just said. So I'm so busy thinking about her and her amazing. So Act 2 Playhouse, I've worked there before. I've done just a little productions there with them, but they reached out to me, I guess in September sometime, and they felt like they had such a nice subscription base that they still wanted to be able to provide some sort of escapism and entertainment to. A lot of their subscribers are of a certain age, and so they are people who are finding themselves a little bit confined right now. So they really wanted to be able to give something to them. And the first virtual production that they did was called Electile Dysfunction. And the way that they're kind of creatively trying to provide a production and entertainment to their subscribers are just writing new shows that then they don't need to get ascertain any rights to, that they can provide and deliver, and then they have taped them in their theater space so that then they will edit them and give them a little virtual theater, not performed live, but pre-recorded and yet delivered like you would at a show. So that they found a lot of good response from their first one in November that they did, satirizing both political candidates and everyone every which way. And so now Act 2 holiday special is trying to satirize the holiday specials that we remember from the 60s, the 70s, even up till now, and just trying to bring a little levity to
that sounds fun.
No,
that sounds fun.
It's really fun. And so we did virtual Zoom rehearsals for several weeks. We wrote a script together, and then we did one day of taping where there are 4 actors all together. I'm sorry, there's 5. There's 5 of us all together. I didn't count myself. And we got in space and had a really nice time just shooting it. And so everyone would take their turns taking their mask off, and we did some nice safe COVID protocols, but we do have a couple of moments where we were all kind of near each other as well. But yeah, so we got that, and it started yesterday. You could buy your ticket and sit and watch the little 55-minute holiday satirical special.
So that's ongoing now, and people can start watching. So I wanted to talk about something. I've been, I'm a member, of the theater community. I've been doing tech direction here in Philly for I don't know, nearly 20 years now. Right? Where's the time go? So there's a relatively young guy, and so I'm a member of, sorry, I'm not pulling this all together well, but so there's all these theater community Facebook groups, and we all comment on theater and we all talk about theater. Being an audience member, you all might not see how much we do behind the scenes and before and after productions, and it's easy to actually for my associate producer, she's been producing some pieces about how we produce things. She's doing some writing about how we produce things, because it's easy to concentrate on the fun part, what you see on stage, or the final ad or movie or production that you see. And that's what everybody that I talk to, and I say, oh, I do work for theater, or I build sets, or however I put it. They're like, oh, that sounds fun. Sure, it's fun. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. And I think, the disconnect is that, as an audience, you see that fun part, and you don't think about how much goes into getting to that fun part. So there's a lot of even just before we get to the point where we're putting something up on stage, just thinking and talking and considering our audience, considering what we want to say, how we want to say it. And there's a relatively young guy, this is where I was going with this, who just joined the Philadelphia theater scene. And he goes by Theater Carlos. He's been posting kind of regularly on some of the people of color centric forums, and he has a YouTube channel. He does a YouTube show, and I'm interested because I'm a Philadelphia based other I do this commentary, and I've caught a couple of his shows, and I want to bring up the points that he's talking about, because he's not talking to the community. He's not talking with us. He's talking at us. And I mean, y'all can feel free to watch his YouTube show. You just have to look up Theater Carlos. I'm not going to provide any links or anything, but it's problematic to me what he's doing right now for two reasons. One, he's talking at the theater community, and what he's saying is that as a theater community, we're screwing up right now. That we are not bringing theater into the modern era. That theater is a dying art, and just listening to both of you describe these two huge projects that are going on right now, and they're both driving us right into the modern era, like as fast as possible. We're theater makers, and we're on Zoom having a talk show, right? We're having a live talk show, and that pivot hasn't happened from other industries. You don't see like restaurants going on Zoom and like virtually hosting their bar so that they can serve drinks to people. I think that would be pretty cool personally, but you don't see other industries taking these risks. You don't see other industries so I want to just feel free to jump in wherever, but like I see us like really really changing really fast. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think so. I'm split down the middle only because I have been at, another thing that actually encouraged me to do this was also attending meetings. There were a lot of meetings with theater makers, Philly, New York, DC, where I felt like every plan was hinged on when we get back to theater, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, but that's not happening. So what are we supposed to do till then? Also, like as a union member, sitting in on my union meetings, some of that was a little split and frustrating, right? In the sense that I was like, what is the plan, right? So there's aspects of what, I haven't heard the video, there's aspects of what you mentioned that talking at the theater community that I'm like, that was kind of happening. But then I also see these wonderful projects that are coming out, like what's happening at Act 2, what theaters are doing, and really what happened, this is the first time in a long time that because actors were moving ahead doing stuff, this actually, I felt, pushed our union, which hasn't happened in 100 years, pushed our union to create vehicles for us to do this work, as opposed to fighting us on it. Like, no, you can't do that. Because basically you have many theaters who are like, I'll just do a SAG streaming independent contract. We could tape it and we could get it out. Because I think what theater makers know, especially as you do these Zoom spaces and Hopin and all these other spaces, StreamYard, is that it's better to have a combination of pre-taped and live performances in whatever you're doing. It just comes off, it's easier, it comes off a little better, it's less glitchy if you don't have a wired system at home, you know what I'm saying? Those type of things. So I agree, like I get it, but I also think this is also, I think it also, truth be told, if I can go even further, I think this is exactly what theater needed. Because we have been stuck, and and this is from me doing TV and film. I never thought when I started in theater that some of my more diverse roles would be in TV and film and theater. I thought theater would do that first, right? And I think that being closed and having all of these talking, all these reports coming out about, like pay, unequal pay and all this other stuff. Not that any of us did not know this. We all knew this, but now the world knows it. And it's like shining this bright light. And I find that sometimes things got to blow up before it can like reacclimate itself to doing not so much as doing the right thing as just being better, right? Being a better version of yourself. I think as artists, we are always asked to woodwork and grind and learn new skills, right? Like none of us stay stuck. Like all of us some of us now have retractable tables for our laptop, right? Because some of us have green screens now at home. We have ring lights. We have voiceover recorders. Some of us have brought Canon cameras that we don't even know how to use. We're like, well, I can record myself and send it back to the studio. All these things are what artists are expected to do every day, right? And so the people who have been making theater or writing theater now have to do that same thing. They have to meet us like in that.
I just wanted to real quick recognize regular guest Jay joined the broadcast. Hey Jay.
Hey,
see you driving.
I loved it. I was like, he driving.
Yeah.
I nearly almost cracked up out loud in the middle of my serious decorum. I was like, and this is my dissertation on what? And I was like, who is this person Zoom bombing us in the middle of the show and nobody's saying anything in the chat? I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep talking and
Jay's not Zoom bombing, Jay's driving. Jay's a regular guest. Feel free to introduce yourself, Jay. If I don't know how well your sound's working. I hear a little feedback, but
yeah, I have these crappy for headphones I bought at the store. Or something.
Yep. At any rate, so yeah. He's a regular guest, so yeah, we kind of have a set of regular guests, and one of our other regular guests might be joining us in a moment. 1 second, I just need to type a number. Anne, why don't you give your thoughts on this matter, if you don't mind?
Well, I think Tamara brings up such a good point where I think I feel very similarly in that I think we have to hold in one hand what we want to get back or understand, okay, these are the things that we're missing, but then also accept that in the other hand, these are all the things that we are using to innovate the way that we're doing things now. I just recently, so I'm sure we've all been in the same boat. We've watched Zoom readings, we watched the Zoom productions. I just tuned into a Zoom production, which is from my alma mater, and my mind was blown. So they're in a university setting and they are using a virtual platform. And what I watched, I thought, oh, this is the future. They took this virtual platform and they have said, we're not letting it limit us. Let's think of all the ways in which it can enhance the story we're trying to tell. It reminds me, and what they did with their editing, with their green screening that they must have used. And these were college kids in dorm rooms. They were not, just like Tamara said, these kids were doing crazy things, probably with their poli-sci roommates right over there. And the director, Della Howlett, is this incredible director, choreographer. And Michael McElroy wrote the music and I believe all the arrangements and also the book. It was an entirely Black-led production from the cast to the creative team, and it was the first of its kind at the new studio on Broadway, which is at NYU. And these kids were able to edit together ensemble numbers that were entirely recorded from their iPhones, so that someone, and I don't know who it was editing, but someone had cut out all of the performers, and I had I had kids here, kids back there. It was just such an incredible way of taking what was lost of the theater and of the past, that we can't have these big numbers with people putting their hearts out together, and they managed to find the way to create that effect for me as an audience member, but by doing it completely creatively and finding the solution. So the effect was still there, but the product was completely different in front of me. So I would say there are so many ways. I don't think theater is dead, but I think the theater we've known, we're finding out that it's not the only theater that's possible. Also,
I think
that's
that's
accessible too.
No, don't worry about it. We talk over each other all the time.
Accessibility is such a different. When we shut down and when we stopped, like Tamara was saying, everybody has known that the system was pretty broken. It's only now that we're all sitting at home that we're finally unearthing all of the inequities and not just who is on stage and who's not on stage, who's not represented. It's also, I think, who's not represented in the audience.
That I've been on that tip for God knows how long. I've been saying that for I don't know how long.
Yeah.
Your production crew, your producers, your office, they all need to be representative of the community you're in. You can't.
I mean, you can't do it. I mean, like when I put together, I forgot to mention that, when I put together the database and resource guide, people were like, oh, and I checked all my books, and I went around to people who had lists to make sure, because that's that's the polite thing to do. If you have is this okay if I do this list? But like, oh yeah, please,
I just want to highlight what you're talking about, which is there's a BIPOC creative database and resource guide that you've created. And Meg can put up the link in the chats, so go ahead. Sorry.
No. What I'm saying is that my search through the work in this database just debunked and proved everything I've always said. When I go to shows, I'm like, how am I the only brown person here? You found no brown stage manager or writer or dramaturg, or if I'm a writer, playwright in a new play at a theater that's giving me all the bells and whistles, and my dramaturg doesn't look like me. I'm like, so my story is blackity black. So so what? Who's gonna help me write this story? You know what I'm saying? So what was interesting is that there are over now 130 creatives listed on that list. 130 I found in a month. So when you say you can't find nobody, you telling a story. Not only are they across just, and I purposely didn't include actors because I really think the problem, James is all, and I've followed him for many times saying it, that it's the production team. So that's why the list has playwrights, dramaturgs, directors, choreographers, lyricists, composers, right? It also has job listings. I now get job listings from Nashville for people to do virtual stuff. So I'm always like, check this out. I get weekly things. I'm about to post a new announcement for Philadelphia Theater Company. They're having something starting this weekend for playwrights to apply for stuff. I get grant proposals, so I put that on there. I get spaces where they're still doing COVID safe residencies where people go to a bed and breakfast and be one person, that type of stuff. Those type of things. I also, was able to get information from the indigenous population that's local here about how would they want virtual spaces to acknowledge indigenous life and indigenous populations, and what does that look like to be respectful historically. Also, a list of diversity, equity, or I'd rather call them anti-racist and bias trainings that you can access for your group instead of being like, I don't know where nothing is. There's no way, unless I am super, super Pippi Longstocking, Encyclopedia Brown. I found all this stuff with Instacart coming here and delivering shit, and we were like, thank you. And you couldn't find nothing.
Well, so I think what one of the things that this highlights is one of the ways, systemic ways in which theater has always been broken a little bit, which is you went out and searched. What theater has always relied on, what theater producers have always relied on, is the submission process. So, you know, and as a producer, I can admit to this as well. You know, like if I have a show and I'm trying to cast it, you know, I do have some ideas in my head, but I also go out, you know, and put out there, hey, why don't you come in for a casting call? You know, it's that submission process. The problem, and where the submission process creates a systemic inequity, is that you have to have the time as an actor or as a technician to do those submissions. You have to have the and if you're housing insecure, if you're monetarily insecure, if you don't have the backing of a family who has extra income and can keep you fed in the lean times, then you don't have the ability to reach out and do those things,
right?
Which creates just this super privileged group of participants in the process.
Right, you have to meet people, I think, halfway, right? Like we couldn't take all of our submissions for the solo project. So one thing that I noticed, you know, and this was like reaching out to people in submissions, is that why not offer, so we offer 6 workshops to the participants, but I'm offering 3 workshops that the people who did not make this cohort, that they can attend any 3 workshops of their choice. Because I still believe that those workshops actually like meet you halfway. Because that's another thing we don't do either, right? Like we make this assumption that everybody has time to sit down, do a Google form and make a video and do this stuff for submission, without knowing that, without remembering that people are not only housing insecure, some people are literally internet insecure.
Right.
Oh, and a lot of times, many of these submissions that used to happen at the free library for people, including myself, I use free library, that's not accessible anymore. It's closed, right? The thing is, how do you make sure that people not only have access to this, but how do they know? How do you help people create a Google folder that just has stuff ready to go? You know, these are 5 things you need to always have: cover letter, this proposal, and you can paste and cut. And that means you can apply for the leeway, you can apply for these things. It's always ready, right? But I didn't come out the womb knowing that stuff. Somebody helped me do that, right? Somebody was like, girl, you need to do such and such. If you don't do that, I was like, oh, okay. So, you know, you get it together, but in learning that lesson, like one thing we have to continue to do is, I believe, to pay it forward too, right? Like there are some people that say, well, why would you give these workshops? You know, that makes it less competitive. Shut up.
I just on a couple of notes here, less competitive is bullshit. The more work there is, the more work there will be. You know, the more productions that exist, the more people want to see, and the more audience you develop, the more you offer, the more you get. I've been trying to teach that lesson to producers also for like 25 years now, but it's not working. I don't know how.
Yeah, I think it's a human factor. Like, I think it's this lack of empathy and grace sometimes. I think I've even been told when I put on my producer hat, you think a lot about your artist. Well, I am one still, right? And I remember vividly when people didn't think about me, when people were like, poof, right? And I'm not thinking about them in such a way where I'm not making this financially viable so it disappears into the night. I get that. I think though it has to have a sense of grace, empathy. You know, it's almost like what I want to offer. You were talking about drinks. Like one thing I want to offer audiences when they do watch these final projects is I want them to go to Black and Mobile and order a meal, or I want to give a list because I know people in Chicago, like where my bases are, will watch it. So Chicago, I'll come up with a list of Black-owned restaurants that deliver and places that deliver liquor. So when you buy your ticket, you can also opt to go make yourself and have a snack. I know I love to eat when I'm watching TV, just why I'm so happy we're in Zoom and you only see the top half.
You should see my desk right now. My desk is covered in coffee stuff at the moment.
I said, maybe I should new dress instead of trying to get into this other one. But like, I think that you should have an experience. Like, what did I used to do when I went to theater? All of us, we grabbed a drink, went to the local diner, especially as actors. We're always eating at 11 o'clock at midnight, right? So it's like, why not take advantage of these things? I'm not asking restaurants to give me a discount. I know they're struggling too, but this allows us to build community, like among our business, like our work, right? So then the next time they'll be like, oh, I got so many calls from your show. You know, I'm gonna do like a show package for you. Oh, yeah. That's even better. You know, like it's a way, and I know I'm sure people are like, let me write this down.
Do it, write it down. The more this is offered, the more, you know, people will get used to the idea, and the more it moves the zeitgeist forward. The other thing I wanted to talk about, meeting people halfway, and which is a specific criticism from Theater Carlos, which I absolutely disagree with this criticism. I'm just representing it here so that we can talk about it. He's criticizing the BIPOC specific Facebook groups, theater Facebook groups, and criticizing that we have a resource that is exclusionary to white people. Now, I know to audience out here, if you've watched any of my other broadcasts, you've probably heard me many times say white is not a race. If you identify as white, you are specifically identifying with a word that was created by slaveholders to separate themselves from the enslaved and create a system whereby there were two classes of people.
He is nodding somewhere.
Right.
Right. He's right.
Right.
Sorry, I just had to. I always have to repeat that.
I love the historical. I almost want to go into a Schoolhouse Rock song for you.
So, but you know, we do have these Facebook groups, and I think of this as meeting halfway, meeting people halfway. You've got these Facebook groups where yes, it's exclusionary to folks who identify as white. However, I've also seen people self-exclude themselves from these groups because they realize what the value is, and the value is that it's a gathered resource for people of color who have less resource to go and seek out these opportunities in a place where there's a lot of competition for that same opportunity. So it creates a system whereby there's an advantage for people who are otherwise disadvantaged. So you know, that's where I think Theater Carlos gets it wrong. I think that he and people like him are not considering the fact that it's important to create these platforms to elevate the opportunities for people of color, because systemically people of color are disadvantaged in. It's not creating we're not creating a separate but equal situation. We're creating an actual uplifting platform.
Yeah.
So sorry.
I think it's okay to have an affinity group. I think affinity groups only bother people because people forget that whiteness has been an affinity group for so long that when they see it go in the reverse, they're like, oh my God, that's terrible. And you're like, that. But that's the thing, like it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I think like it allows for conversations to happen, but it also it goes back to what we talked about before about people knowing what jobs are. Like, if I put everything in these affinity groups, now nobody can say, oh, I didn't know, right? Like,
right.
Concentrated group of people.
Right. I mean, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, you know, you put your call out on the affinity group, it gives that affinity group a leg up on that call, and they're more likely to see it. I just want to recognize that it's 10 of... Oh, go ahead, Anne.
Well, I was just going to say, I think people who think similarly to who you're talking about, Peter Carlos, I think they're thinking about it all wrong. Just because somebody else has a tiny piece of pizza, and I think, oh, but I wanted a piece of pizza, it doesn't mean I'm not going to get a piece of pizza. Just order a different pie. Like, you're thinking about it as just this one little tiny circle. Just because someone's going to get that bigger sliver doesn't mean there's no pizza left for you.
Right.
There's plenty of pizza.
Right.
You were talking about the fear of, like, the idea of the glass not even full, right? It's the same way when people have ideas. They're like, well, make sure you keep it to yourself. I'm like...
So this is actually a good segue into me talking about one of the topics. I think we've talked about truth. We've talked about a lot of truth this morning. One of the topics for today is terrorists, and I wanted to specifically talk about the white terrorists that the Proud Boys, the nationalist groups that are plaguing many cities. Not here in Philadelphia, and in a small part to a bunch of people that I know who are anti-fascist and anti-racist. We've definitely, I think we've been pretty successful at excluding open speech of fascism and racism here in Philadelphia. You know, we don't have Proud Boys marching every weekend. We did have that one weekend when they decided to come into the city,
which I was at, and I ran into them after in the rape march. So let's not talk about that trauma. I was like, of all the days,
better be a warrior queen out in the streets.
Oh my gosh! It literally ran into them, and a black female cop literally lifted me out. She was like, "Girl, I need you to go that way." Because they were, you know, you could tell the cops had been assigned to their detail, whatever. And then I was giving a speech at a socialist rally, and two of them were like, and then I saw the same two of them with like similar markings on their thing, but they were just regular cops. But then you're just like, sorry, I did not mean to interrupt. I just had a...
No. Yeah. Like, not interrupting. It's conversation. The weirdness of Zoom, I think, is kind of screwing up our normal conversational methods. Like, we all have to, like, kind of do that little pause when somebody else starts to talk.
You gotta wait till you get that green square, and then...
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
You're like, it's my turn.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, we have these terrorists going around, and I think that is the difference in mentality between these groups who want to be terrorists and these groups and groups of people who are just trying to make the world a better place. I think that a lot of people have been sold on the zero-sum nature of, like, sold on a zero-sum nature of the world, a zero-sum view of the world, which is hyped by both our current president and his forebearers. His father was a huge zero-sum game person. Like, if you look at things that he said, the elder Trump Sr. said and wrote, his belief was in this zero-sum world. A lot of the folks that are terrorists right now believe in a zero-sum world, and I don't understand that. Like, I don't understand how you can look at history, like just the world history, and not see that every time people operate in a collaborative manner, society advances. every time people start operating in this zero-sum manner where they're trying to gather as much wealth and as much individual praise as they can, society collapses. Like that's just the pattern of history. Like, how can you not look at that and see, like, you know, oh, Caligula was pretty cool and he took over this huge portion of the world, but right immediately after that, society collapsed worldwide. Like, you know, like not society.
People don't want advancement, though, James. That's the problem.
Yeah, but why? Why don't they want to recognize that?
Because if advancement happens and equality happens, my stranglehold on a society, my stranglehold on a demographic, my stranglehold on education, on law will slip. Because if we're all different backgrounds, we're all different people right now, we're all talking. There are large groups of people who don't want us doing exactly what we're doing now, talking in a rational manner. They won't be arguing with James, they won't be arguing with you and you. They don't want us talking civilly and building for a better world, because if they do that, I can't have this stranglehold on everybody else. Because if everyone is mindless drones, I can control them. But if we're all individuals with great opinions and great ideas, all collectively working together towards a goal, that messes my hustle up. Because my hustle is chaos. If you know, you can't have chaos if everybody's talking and agreeing and working together and laughing. That doesn't work. Like, there's a large group of people that don't want that, and the ringleader.
I mean, historically, it's been a tool of let's just divide and conquer, right? Like, we go back to Bacon's Rebellion. So before Bacon's Rebellion, a lot of people don't realize that the Irish were at that time considered to be the most likely to intermingle with Negroes. Literally, that was like that was the known thing, or was popular. And so what they did is the Virginia Act came about to literally, because Bacon's Rebellion, that was an interracial rebellion. They were kicking people's behinds. They had found a like purpose. And the landowners were like, nope. So they came up with Virginia Act. What did Virginia Act do? It specifically gave white male indentured servants 50 acres of land, and white female seed and corn. So you can intermingle with each other. I got the seed, I got the land, and I can separate from the black people who I think I found a like cause with, because now I have a sense of difference, right? And so this idea of separation has always happened. It happened, you know, the reason why they murdered Fred Hampton has a lot to do with how he was bringing people together. He was bringing people from the Appalachian Mountains, from Tennessee, from here. Poor whites, working class, indigenous people. They were like, oh, nope. So it was like, you murdered him violently, like to basically be like, no. Every time there is a time of cohesion, there is a huge violent act at the end of it to make sure that it does not happen again. And anytime that happens over and over and over, and because we also, you know, as a person who teaches democracy and education, I can tell you most of my college students come to me and they're like, I ain't know none of this stuff, you know, and it has a lot to do with the fact that not only do we keep people in the dark, like Jay said, we also keep them in the dark by making sure we don't teach linear history.
No, that can't happen.
Right, we don't teach primary stories. Like, I am always in awe how many young people will be like, I've never read Howard Zinn's People's History of America. I'm like, he gave the book away after he died. He was like, here you go. It literally has personal like passages, journals of Columbus being like killing, pillaging, murder. And they're like,
they can't allow that. Like there's an essay that won I think one of the writers won a Nobel Prize for. I'm sure you heard of it. It was in the New York Times.
Yeah.
1619 essay. Mm-hmm. And that's
also a beautiful essay. It's been passed out to a bunch of teachers who don't teach it in class.
But if you start inserting that in schools, that disrupts everything that's already generically taught all the time. We march, Dr. King, slavery, blah blah, Rosa Parks. It's like the 4 or 5 people that they always touch on, especially during so-called Black History Month. If you start teaching that the origins of slavery go much, much further back, and it intertwines with every part and every echelon of America, that disrupts things. I'm finding new things out about Abraham Lincoln in my 40s that I was never taught when I was a kid.
Right.
He was a horrible person, a horrible individual.
Yeah.
He was horrible. We still have kids, kindergartners, dressing up like
him,
singing songs. Like, no, they don't do little Hitler marches in Germany. Like, dude, we got to stop. We have to stop. I'm being here with
it's just like people never study Hitler's education plan, right? Like when you really study his plan, you find out that it's this brilliant plan, and it actually is socialism, but only for Nazis, right? Because the whole idea was to share certain things. And people say, well, because of that, socialism is bad. No, it is a good thing.
Most of the education system, most of the financial system, most of the things that are generated and oozed out of government agencies cater mostly towards Anglo-Saxons. It's the same thing.
Oh, it is. Well, a lot of our banking systems are also based upon enslavement. A 30-year mortgage came from a 30-year loan that you would have on a slave, because that was the intended lifespan of them. If you think about bankruptcy laws, came after the crash of cotton in the 1800s. And President Van Buren was like, okay, plantation owners, here's a break for you because you don't got no money. Bankruptcy laws. When we decided to have multiple banks as opposed to the one bank here in Philadelphia. Because that's another thing. I'm always like, people from Philadelphia, I'm like, there's great history here. Like people like, I love Hamilton. Do you? Because everything you talked about happened in Philadelphia. And you would never know it happened if you watched the whole musical. I'm gonna let that go. Like only one meeting happened in New York. Everything else happened right down there on Market Street with the nasty fish and them pissing on each other on the ground. That's exactly what it looked like. Okay. So the whole thing is that this is, I find like even now, like we have been working with students who've been calling out racism at Central and Masterman, all the schools they've gone to. And the teachers are like, what do you mean? You, they talking about you. Like you, they are calling you out. It is like Black at Masterman, Black at Central. All your receipts are on Instagram. Because the kids are like, we not taking this no more. Yes, we want to be smart and we love being smart, but we're not going to let you be like, oh, you can't build a community because you're from North Philly. What? Who are you talking to? Like, why are you saying things like that? Or talk about the fact that only 25% of teachers in Philadelphia right now are African American. And 76% of the students are Black and Latina.
Wow.
You know, like I've taught long enough to remember when you couldn't throw a rock and not hit another brown person. But I do remember teaching at Lincoln High School, and in weeks, all the Black students I didn't even have. Hey, Miss Anderson. I was like, why do these kids know my name? And then when I looked around, I was like, oh, I missed 8 of us. With 2,000 students, right? So this is a problem. Like this, and I think like as much as we can continue to have these conversations, right? Because I'm all about conversations because I believe, you know, one conversation changes somebody else's whole thing. You know what I'm saying? So, okay, I'm gonna stop.
All right, so it's 11:02, and we got to wrap because I got to jump right into covering the ACT UP action for housing in Delaware. So ACT UP is an organization that was started during the beginnings of the AIDS epidemic. And they're a group that still does actions with regards to housing security and AIDS, the continuing AIDS epidemic. They released a great statement yesterday, and they're down in Wilmington today trying to get a meeting with Joe Biden's transition team.
Oh wow! Nice.
But so we're going to be covering that in the next hour. And I just wanted to thank you all for being great guests today. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you joining us. I'm going to cut to a view of just me, but you're all welcome back on the chat anytime. And you'll see invites every week. We're going to be taking the next 4 weeks off from broadcasting the coffee break chat, but other than that, every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Feel free to join us live, and please support us on Patreon, Light Thief Productions on Patreon, and subscribe to our channels. You know, folks that we're independent media, and folks that use independent media, we just, you know, like we're only here for you, so we don't answer to advertisers. But thank you. I just want to say bye to y'all.
Thank you.
And see you again soon. So with that, I'm gonna end the broadcast for today. We didn't really get to the PA Rogue legislators, but I will talk about that when we pick up in 4 weeks. And I really appreciate everybody for dropping by. Please feel free to join us live in a couple of minutes on Act Up Philly's Facebook page. It's facebook.com/actupphilly/live, and we'll be doing a broadcast from their action live in Wilmington, Delaware. And so tune in 4 weeks for another coffee break chat. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.